So usually I do the starting now so no one can see my little dancing at the beginning, but not today because I got to show off the new border. So welcome to tonight's podcast. We have a slew of guests joining me and Younger tonight. So I am super excited to introduce them one on one, and we'll go through stuff. Tonight's topic is spooky season: how to make your games a little bit darker, how to add dark flair to your games, however you want to say it. Just a quick introduction. So we have Mark Lyon over here. Next to him is Eric Enlow. And last
Oh,
but not least is Timothy Lenda. Linda, how do you say your last name? I like goof it up. I'm sorry. Also, you're muted.
Edna.
Ledna. All right. I apologize. It's always one, right? So, I'm going to give you guys a little bit at the beginning to kind of talk about yourselves, introduce who you are, what you do. Two of you are our first local guest ever. We got to play with you guys tonight at the local tournament that we're at for Smash. So you will probably hear about them all the time for fun reasons. I'll make more announcements about that later. But since you guys are the local guys, I'm going to start the man who's staying up way past midnight for us. Mark, take it away. Who are you? What you do? What you think?
I'm an artist and life coach in North Carolina. We work with mental illness, addiction, uh, a lot of stuff, trauma, and I'm a big geek. I did a lot of tabletop role-playing games. I collect comic books. I do a little bit of everything, and I'm just happy to be here.
And for those of you that don't know, I had the pleasure of being on Mark's podcast not that long ago. So we're super excited to have him over here with
Yes,
us.
yes,
Hopefully, he's a returning member because he's been a community member for about a month now. Wahaha. All right, jumping
yes.
over to Eric.
Hello, my name is Eric Enlow, and I am an esports coach from Fairbanks, Alaska. I work as a high school coach for the local high school, Lathrop High School. I operate a private esport coaching business. I help out at the university with their esport prospects, and I'm working with Timothy here at his Gamers Lounge and Internet Cafe, hoping to expand esport opportunities to gamers within Alaska.
Super important, and we're super excited about it. All right, and last but definitely not least, Timothy. Tell us who you are, what you do. Tell us about this gamer lounge.
Put a spotlight in my car here. So I am sitting in my car because the Gamers Lounge, where I was at this evening, is full of people and noise, and so this is going to be the best place for me to hang out while I visit with you all. So I was born in Denver, raised in Chicago, been in Fairbanks, Alaska for the last 3 years. I have had a decent career, 15, 20 years as a helping professional, running residence halls and student affairs programs at colleges and universities. And then here in Alaska, I was actually hired at UAF, the local university, to be in charge of residence halls, but was hired in January 2020. So you all know, if you remember the timeline, COVID hit March 2020, and we did send all of our students home. So I was without a job and in a new place, far away from home. I decided I liked it enough that I wanted to stay, and it ended up using. I have my second master's degree is in mental health counseling, so I ended up getting a job as a therapist at Fairbanks Native Association, and then served Alaska Behavioral Health for the last 2 years in the mobile crisis team. But I ended all of that, and for the first time ever, I am not a salaried employee. I do not work for the man or the woman any longer. I am focusing all of my time and attention now on my small business. I opened Gamers Lounge and Internet Cafe on July 17th. We partnered with the Chamber of Commerce, of which I'm a member, and we had a big grand opening ceremony, cut the ribbon, and now we've had a trickle of business coming in, customers here and there popping in to check out what we've got. My goal is to provide a really inexpensive gaming space for members of the community who identify as gamers to come together, be involved in the gaming, all that's new about gaming, and share stories. Come out of their basements, come out of their rooms, sit with one another in a more social environment. And then we offer snacks, drinks, non-alcoholic, of course, but drinks and snacks. And then I spent 2 years in Las Vegas, where I learned the skill of Texas Hold'em Poker. So we also boast a poker school attached to Gamers Lounge. And so we host tournaments and teach people how to play poker.
Which, by the way, is fantastic. We much appreciate that. It's something really unique to Fairbanks, to say the least. So, now that our introductions are over, let's jump into tonight's topics. Again, we'll kind of give you guys a couple minutes at the end to pitch talk and do all kinds of other stuff, so don't be afraid. You'll be able to talk about more stuff in a bit. But tonight's topic, spooky season. It's October. Couldn't avoid it. It was going to be one of the topics for these month's podcast, because it always is. But let's talk about what that means. How do you add dark flair to the games that you play? And I'm just gonna throw the question out there. And what does spooky season mean to you, Mark? When someone says the word spooky season, how does that apply to you?
I've always been big on spooky stuff. So like I was really big in horror, and those were my favorite genre of movies. So I usually think of horror movies when I think of spooky, or sometimes fantasy stuff, but mostly horror.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to that later, because there's 4 billion other questions to go along with that. But that's a great answer. All right, what about you, Eric?
I think it really depends on what you categorize as spooky, but the way I look at it, there's two different angles. One is what we see in meme culture, where it's this theme of Halloween and there's these caricatures of pumpkins and ghosts and stuff, and we use that to tell stories to our children. And I've worked in preschools and whatnot, and it's been a very interesting way to engage with the season. But the other part is like a thrill seeker of horror, things that, to an extent, there's a line that's controlled. You know you're going to be terrified, but you can anticipate um, a range of what type of horror she'll come into. But this thrill seeking of fear, of shock, of surprise is the other element of it to me. So when I think of spooky, I think of controlled terror, and I think of joyous holiday, although with a maybe less colorful spectrum to it.
Gotcha. Okay, I think it's a good answer. Again, I'm gonna ping off that in a couple minutes once we get everyone else's answer, because that's another great topic to go into. All right, Timothy.
Sorry about that. So the changing of the seasons, when we go from summer to fall, fall to winter, spring, summer, Alaska's kind of just winter or summer. It feels like we missed the spring and the autumn, but nonetheless, the leaves still change colors and fall off the trees. And I love the changing of the seasons. And so when we get ready for Halloween and spooky season, if you will, with kids dressing up in costumes and people handing out candy, it signals to me that it is a time for a change of season. And I like that. I want to live in an environment that has a changing of the seasons. I just mentioned Alaska seems to only have 2 seasons, but I have an aunt who lives in Florida, and I think it's really just kind of one season over there. It's just sunshine all the time. But I like that, and I think it reminds me that I am more a traditional in terms of I really like the changing of the seasons because of family connections. And I'm a foster parent currently. I adopted 2 boys from foster care in Utah, and I'm currently a foster parent here in Alaska. But going through these holidays and the changing of the seasons with kids is really special to me.
That's awesome. Again, I'll ping off that one too. And last but not least, Younger, what's a spooky season mean to you? And I'd say keep it PG, but this is probably the one episode where you can just let loose, you little weirdo. You're muted, so I can't even hear the terrible things you're saying currently.
I did last time. It was a great episode if you go back and look at it. But in regards to spooky season, at least in realms of the game, I think that making enemies that are actually scary to the party, not just themed, because people are like, oh, vampires. It's like, Strahd's not that scary, but if you give Strahd like some legendary actions that he can do in the middle of your campaign, that might make him scary. And it doesn't even have to be that. Just like clerics are like, oh, turn undead, and then okay, well, crawling claw familiars don't care, and then they'll attack them. Just make it a dragon crawling claw. Then it has like 80 HP, and it's going after the cleric. That's something that would terrify players at least.
Okay, so again, to kind of ping off that one, setting players' expectations and subverting them, right? Which is pretty much the basis of most horror in general, right? We'll do something classic movie wise and go Friday the 13th, right? That's classic horror. We can all agree to that. Summer camp is somewhere supposed to be safe, where you're supposed to have fun, where you're supposed to grow and learn. And in that movie, the subversion is it's not safe. Something's going to get you. How many Friday the 13th are there now? 13, 14? I stopped watching after
There's
X, I
got to
think.
be more than that.
Oh God, there's so many.
Yeah,
Some
I
of them
think
are
there's so many.
some of them are really good. Some of them are just like, it's not even worth the time. Well, just skip these ones.
I imagine there's about as many as there are Fast and Furious films.
I think there's more still, but
And,
just
and
barely. It's only because they got like a 20-year head start.
Hellraiser's getting up there too.
Right? Oh man, with the redos. Oh man.
Yeah.
So that leads into our next topic to kind of talk about here. Let's some cultural touchstones that we as people that are building these games can kind of pull from popular media and use in our stories. And I'm going to take your guys' answers and expand on them a little bit more. So this is kind of what Mark was talking about originally, where it was talking about movies and games. So let's start with some fun movies, Mark, that you would throw into the Halloween season that you can be like, if you take some cool stuff from there, what would it be? Not Friday the 13th, because I stole that
I
one
mean,
from you. I'm sorry.
no, it would have to be Hellraiser.
Hellraiser, okay.
I mean, there's so much you can do with Hellraiser in a gaming type situation. I mean, you have characters that come from a different world and they have a puzzle box that does terrible things to everybody who touches it, like skin flayed. Like it's gruesome horror with a hint of nostalgia to monsters, but these monsters are like the pinnacle of monsters. So you have the option to have to find a way to banish like any of those types of characters, and the sky's the limit with them because they are of untold horror, and like you just have to find a way to either beat the box or beat them. And usually people try to go with the box instead of just taking them out, as a whole.
I mean, I think your chances are higher with the box, unfortunately. You ever seen those Yahoos? They're terrible.
This is true. Yeah,
Now,
Pinhead's no joke.
right? So, to kind of expand on that one, right? Because we talked about filleting the flesh and being really gruesome. In a lot of games, some people are going to have issues with that. So, as a DM, that's something you have to do with setting the expectations of your table. Even if you are having a quote unquote scary session, a spooky thing, you got to know where your table's at on like what is okay for them to play with. If you got a person that pukes at the thought of blood, telling them that they just, filleted a creature or had a creature in front of them get split in half Mortal Kombat style might not be good for them. You know what I mean? Depending on who you're playing with. I know we've had some guests on the show where I made a joke like that and they were like, oh, just me talking about it. So as a GM, you really do have to make sure that your table's okay with whatever body horror that you're throwing at them, because there are other ways to be spooky, and we'll get into that later. But I think this is a good thing that some people just don't do well with those thoughts, and knowing what your table can handle, right? And generally, not that I'm a huge fan of it, but go to your table's lowest denominator. If you have one person that is just can't deal with blood, that's what you got to deal with. You know what I mean? There are ways to still have spook and horror and terrifying things without the gore side of things. But if you're at a table that's like, yeah, do it, have fun. Just, know where your table's at and talk to them about it beforehand. If you're having a one shot or a long term campaign, those are expectations that you need to set. If you're having a season of horror at your table, make sure your players know what they're getting into before they, step forward. All right, jumping over to Eric. Eric, give me some video games. What's some good video game references that people can kind of pull from?
I'm trying to think. there was an I don't remember the exact name of it, but I think in like early like 2015 to 2007, there were a plethora of indie RPG Maker RPGs that came out there. And the common theme that would be around them is that they focused on psychological horror. They
Mhm.
focused a lot on things that creeped you out or made you uncomfortable, or the use of music where it would suddenly skip a beat in a way that's uncanny because we're used to thinking in patterns was a great way to sell horror. So I couldn't give you a specific name, but there's a slew of them that were very popular at the time.
What
Um,
what about something like yep, brain work here. Amethysia? No, that's not how you say that word. Where you forget things.
Amnesia.
That one.
Amnesia.
Thank you. Jeez, was not coming to
So
my brain.
so I like the idea of amnesia and forgetting things, and this capitalizes on one of the core fears that many people have, and that's the fear of change and the fear of failure being permanent. In this case, if you forget something, not only is that permanently gone, but it's like you lost a part of your life. And if you put that in the context of a game where there's not a way to recover that, now there's a sense of pressure because they don't want those um, inhibitions to continue to mount up. And that's a great way to implement fear, both with the theme of whatever type of horrors you might be describing, but then fear in the player utilizing the unique perspective that they have as a player.
So I'm gonna jump to Younger on this one because this is an area which he is an expert at. What kind of monsters would do that? You think, Younger?
Oh, hags.
Hags. What kind of hags? Tell us about the hags. Speaking of hags,
Oh,
we
what
made a
kind
set
of
of hags
hags?
for Mother's Day last year. So if anyone's interested in free hags, we got free hags once every year.
I'm trying to think of the actual one, but you could basically just like say any of them, whether it be a green hag or an anise hag or a better hag. You could just be like they have the modify memory spell, and then they could do anything from changing your outlook on a particular individual. Like you might think that somebody who was once your friend is now um, a rival or at worst an enemy. Somebody who's trying to plot to kill you. In reality, they're just trying to help explain the situation, and you're acting erratically.
Okay, I mean that's all good. Jumping down to Timothy. Timothy, if you were in a horror movie, what would be the scariest one to be in for you? You think?
Oh, anything with an exorcism. Uh, that's probably the only real life thing that I'd be frightened of is as a religious person. I really do believe in Satan, the devil, right? I think that's a real entity, and I do think that there are historical stories that are true about people that have been possessed by the devil, and so going to watch a horror movie, even a fictional one, that gets my hairs tingling on the back of my neck, sort of thing.
Man, if we're a sponsor, this would be a perfect time to sponsor the new Exorcist that's coming out in like 2 weeks. Unfortunately, we're not, but whatever. I'm with you. A demonic possession is great for storytelling because you can have it done to one of their players, and as a boon, they get extra powers, but they don't get to control their actions. They just get to do the roles. And you can always have a friendly NPC that the players love. Boblin the Goblin that's been following around forever. He's their best friend. Boom, demon possession for a session or two. Terrifying, especially if you make him super powerful and he has to fight, or even worse, that you have to stop him from hurting himself or others, right? Because as characters that care about these creatures, right? Uh, Having them hurt themselves or others is painful for us to watch, right? Even if we're playing our games and whatnot. Um, Making sure Boblin doesn't hurt other people, giving him that finalistic choice of ending the creature's life so the demon possession stops, or finding a way to stop it in an alternate route, are all great storylines to take your players through. Because not only do they have to deal with the demon craziness that's going on in their friend Boblin the Goblin, they also have to find a cure or decide that we're just going to fight this demon and call it a day, and risk losing our friendly follower of doom. So those are great ones. One that we didn't really grab yet is the and this kind of hits on both movies and video games really hard, is the constant follower. Resident Evil is one of the best ones for this one I can think. Where they have a giant creature that can tank 4 billion damage that's just consistently following the party at a slow speed. So like your party has to rest, it has to sleep, right? They might be outrunning this gnome, goblin, whatever it is that just doesn't stop.
It's a snail.
It could be a snail, yeah. If you want to be super funny and have the snail chase them, meme it up. Or the goose. My favorite is the goose that can't die. Like it just got 5 hit points or something. It just causes havoc. If they kill it, it comes back the next day, kind of thing.
They have liches for that mechanic.
Look, if you're playing if you're playing in my campaigns, yes, for sure, liches do that. But a chasing horror, you know what I mean, something that the players don't conceivably think they can win against, especially low level ones that like this creature will say only takes damage from magical weapons, and none of them have magical weapons. So we'll say the wizard is the only one that can do any damage to it or something like that, right? Or the paladin or all that can only do 1 or 2 hits before they run out of hacha, right? So they can wound it and that's it, and then it just keeps following them. So they have to run and get to no place. It's a fantastic way to build a story to where your characters have to build enough strength to fight whatever's chasing them. Eventually. You know what I mean? It's great for low-level campaigns where they don't have items and things like that. Excuse me. Where that constant chase is happening. It doesn't even have to be like a fast pace. You know what I mean? They could be like, they move at half speed. They're only 30 feet per turn. So you could outrun them forever, technically, but you're going to get tired and they won't. So it'll take a little
less
bit
of a creature and more of an obstacle.
Exactly, right? Setting up your storyline that way can make it interesting, and maybe have it to where it's only attacking the party, right? So it doesn't get distracted by other things. It is beelining for a single member or for the entire group. That is a terrifying concept. You can also minify that feeling into a singular combat where it doesn't die. The objective of the combat is to escape or, activate some kind of item or something like that, right? But don't make it obvious for your players that that's how you defeat this creature is by pressing the big red button. They have to fight it and figure out that they can't win. If you're playing with a group of murder hobos, that's their solution to just hit things until they die, this is an excellent creature to throw at them. No hit points. It doesn't take damage. It can be stunned and other things, so it can react to their special abilities, so they don't feel like they're wasting their turns. But then, boom, I did 700 damage and it's still alive. Yeah, because it's taken 0 so far.
Take a moment to hit on something that Timothy mentioned earlier.
Of course.
So in D&D, mechanically, there's only like really a couple creatures that like technically can like possess you, you know, like the ghost or whatever, or maybe like a certain demon. But you can still have a similar mechanical effect in game to lesser or higher extremes via like charmed effects, you know. And so it doesn't have to be a big scary demon. I mean, it could be, but it could be like some like Spriggan in the woods kind of deal, and you just walked into a druidic grove and there are multiple like dryads that are there, and the ranger has an animal companion, and suddenly his animal companion tries to eat his face off. Or and so just the player losing control of a core mechanic of their person, or they go up against a paladin of darkness, you know, and then this evil paladin casts command and forces the player themselves to drop what they're wielding, or like walk up and just stop in front of them, except, and they do it to the wizard, and then on the paladin's first turn he's just gonna smite that wizard out of existence. There are like several different mechanics that can be played in role play aspects from the charm. Yeah, from the charm effects and or fear effects, you know. I have to say in D&D, probably one of the most scary things is if you're fighting a sea hag and you are frightened of the sea hag and the sea hag looks at you, you just die. There's no hit points or anything. Like if you fail to save, you just die. It doesn't matter. I had 200 hit points. Don't matter. You died.
Excuse my cough. I'm over here dying.
I think another thing you could use is like a timed effect where you basically have like a cursed object that gives you 7 days to die. So it gives you a sense of urgency and a way to instill fear in a different way. It's more of an anxiety because you're in a rush to handle the situation. And like you just like the ring, basically, where 7 days and it's just you have to beat the time. And that can be scary in itself when you feel like you're running out of time.
Oh yeah, or like if there's like you can only find a cure to lycanthropy, like within 10 days.
Yep.
You know, or otherwise
Yeah.
you will become a lycanthrope, and the DM will take control of your character, and you'll go on a murder rampage on the first full moon.
Murder rampage is my
You could also do cursed blades or cursed weapons and stuff like that, because that's another way that you could use it to possess somebody or an animal, is being stabbed with like a cursed blade or just picking up one and then having to deal with everything that goes along with cursed weapons and cursed armor.
Or
Especially
giving the players the knowledge that there's a blade that the bad guy wields that if you die, you become an undead and can't be resurrected or something.
that sounds terrifying. But that actually leads into our next topic super well. Let's talk cosmetics of spooky season. So I'm gonna go to each one of you, and I need something that like, what would you use as monsters slash an aesthetic for a world if you were crafting him, specifically put in the Halloween or the dark theme. Where's your head going? Start with Mark.
Steampunk circus.
Ooh, okay, nice. That's generally not touched on in dark horror, but I could totally see how it could be. You know what I mean? Especially if you're kind of like on the Imperium of Man kind of steampunkiness. From
Clowns are
like,
creepy.
Yeah.
yeah, clunks are creepy. Yeah, if you're
And
stuck
they
in a single
are.
city.
And then with the game that just came out, Lies of P, kind of touches on that, like because it's a weird version of Pinocchio, and it's just like Jiminy the Cricket is just a voice that talks to him in his head. And it's like you don't ever really see him, even though other people call to him, and he has to fight big steampunk monsters that are called puppets. Like it's just, taking that aspect and putting it with a circus and all the things that go wrong with the circus. And that so many people have fears of clowns and just the things in the circus, especially if you're looking at something like Cirque du Soleil. Like those masks are creepy sometimes, and that could be a really good effect to use to, establish a very interesting type of game.
Well, and bonus note on the circus. Circuses are great for having small, short time themes that are just like it's a pop up event. It's we're doing this because we're playing on Halloween. Boom, creepy circus. That's an excellent vehicle to get that theme there in pretty much any setting. So I like that. It's a great idea. All right, we're gonna jump down to Timothy. What's a spooky theme for you? If you were building a world?
Inspired me. Yeah, I'm inspired by something that is staring me straight in the face here as I'm parked on 2nd Avenue in great old Fairbanks, and that is someone has a cast iron wolf um, door, I guess. It's, yeah. Anyway, so, the exorcism thing, I said I'm frightened by those. I think the scariest time for me outside of a movie theater is going into the woods, camping, and then you got the dead of night, pitch black, and you hear animal sounds, and you're not sure what it is. Maybe it's a wolf, maybe it's a bear rustling around, but I think some sort of morphing animal would be how I would accessorize a play world. And if I want to make it spooky, these fictitious animals morph back and forth into humans, evil humans, and their animal, of course, is equally evil.
Nice. Okay, so kind of hitting on the skinwalker slash what's the other? What's the other thing? Wendigo-esque horror, or if you're digging real deep, The Thing, which is a total different type of body horror that is equally terrifying and brings up doppelgangers, especially in D&D. Again, there's plenty of other systems that have a changeling-esque race that would fit in super well. All right, jumping over to Eric.
So I do have an answer for that, but first, like listening to Timothy, the first thing I thought was 3 words: actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf.
And there he
and
was.
somebody had taken the song and made a stat sheet and lore to bring actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf into the game, which has been an ongoing beam between me and a good number of my friends, and my sister's really big on D&D, so I hear about it a lot. And before I get into my answer for Halloween, I did look up some of the games I was talking about previously. Mad Father and Amori are 2 of those RPG makers that are great inspiration using psychological horror. And that takes me to my answer. My answer, what I think about of Halloween, is very similar to our first guest, is puppetry, particularly because of how uncanny it is. I don't know if I would necessarily go into like steampunk or clowns and circus, although that it is definitely a fear. I would like to focus more on, the mechanical aspects of the human body breaking down and not working. Some of the more popular cultural references that we've had in horror has been like Slenderman, who is this faceless body that it's uncanny, it's unfamiliar. It is familiar in the sense that it looks human, but there's no facial features, there's no recognition. The face and body proportions are beyond what is normal for a human, and so it's uncanny, it's creepy, and it's uncomfortable. If you take this concept of the uncanny, you might see it in the movements of a puppet and how it's very mechanical and different from ways that humans can move, such as the head moving like an owl going all the way around in a snapshot. You can intensify that horror by perhaps focusing on older puppets, and not older as in ancient, because ancient things might spark the idea of adventure, but older things as in what is forgotten, things that we don't remember, fear of the unknown, or fear of what has changed since it's been previously known. And you can see this approach taken in the popular games such as Five Nights at Freddy's. We all know they're animatronics, which is a very happy place, but it's contrasted by that it's forgotten, run down, and broken. And then you bring in the uncanny with the way that they move. So when I think, to answer the question, when I think of horror, I think of the uncanny.
Gotcha. But so you would build yours as the old forgotten mechanical stuff. So kind of on the same steampunky wavelengths, or maybe just mechanical in general, right? So
You can move away from mechanics. That's an example of it. But you could do dryads, old dead trees, or you could do golems or things, clay golems, mud golems, those things that resemble humans. It doesn't necessarily have to be robotics. When I'm speaking mechanical, I'm talking about the way the body moves.
Gotcha.
And the more human it looks, but unhuman it moves, the more creepy it usually is.
Gotcha.
Have you seen the movie Legion?
Yes.
We are Legion.
Like the ice cream man in Legion.
Or the old lady.
My memory is
Yeah.
a bit faulty, but I do remember the movie.
Yeah, so the movie is what, 7 people get trapped at a roadside stall restaurant-y place while
Yeah, like a little diner.
Satan invades, and they gotta survive.
It's
I'm
actually
thinking of
the
a totally different
angels.
movie.
Oh,
that
it's the angels, right, yeah.
Mine, guys.
All right, Younger, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there. What's your theme?
So I was going along those lines of the unknown and such, and so I think The Mist is a perfect example of that. Like, you don't know what's in there, and like mechanically, like a game mechanics wise, like you can't see, where the enemy is, what exactly the enemy is. You don't know because your Arcana check wasn't good enough. And like from that aspect, and or adding the additional like creepy mechanics. Like you can have it thematically be like you could have a scary situation happen like out on the open ocean, and a kraken attacks the boat. Like that's bad. But in D&D, that like the scariest place on real planet Earth, I think, is like you're out in the middle of the ocean, you're not going to be able to swim to shore, and if a kraken attacks your boat and you somehow live, you're either going to starve or die of dehydration, whatever. But
Not
if you
me,
get
but
grabbed and then
different.
you're pulled under the water until it gets dark and you can't see, oh, that's terrifying. Like, just saying, would not be a fan if that happened. But then also just going out into like the unknown, whether it be like another realm like the Shadowfell or anywhere else like Hermaeus Mora's, world of like tentacle books and shit, like that's it, like you said, it's all about that like uncanny surroundings, afraid of the unknown, and things that are different, and when you lose control, whether it be like control of your body or like from like a person's like mental standpoint, like people are most frightened when they have no control of their lives, or at least feel like they have no control of what's happening in their lives. And so if you can template that into the game, that will make the game definitely high stress for those people.
Now, to kind of touch on the high stress stakes and whatnot, spooky season, if we go back to the original title, doesn't really imply true horror, right? It is a controlled essence, right? As Eric said, it's kind of like as scary as you can take. It's meant for kids, little ghosts in costumes, handing out candy while looking like little monsters, or sexy nurses, or whatever you're dressing up for this year. Um, that's the spooky side of things. So what's the tolerable limit for you guys? Where is your like I'm okay with this? If it's this or less, I'm good. We're gonna start with Timothy on this one.
Sure, after that, I have a pretty high tolerance for uh, electronic spooky. So if it's in a game format or it's on a big screen, I'm okay with stretching the limits. But like I think about haunted houses and stuff, and if there's physical contact, or I'm having to crawl through some small opening into an unknown abyss or something, like I won't even. You will not get me involved in that whatsoever. So, but and in terms of electronics, I have a pretty high tolerance.
There we go. That was
Excuse
the right
me.
that was the right reaction for most people. Those that are listening later are gonna freak out. It's gonna be great. Anyway, jumping up to Mark because he giggled the hardest.
Um, I have a pretty high tolerance. Like I said, I grew up watching horror movies, all horror movies. And it got to the point where I was watching those. Remember those videos that were like Faces of Fear, Faces of Death, and it was just terrible stuff happening to people,
Mm.
or just random violent things. And like I used to look at Rotten.com when it was a big thing. Um, so I've watched a lot of terrible things, and most of them were real people. So I think when it comes to it being more real than fake is where my tolerance ends, is because I've seen what can happen to the human body when hit by a train, or seeing amputees and stuff like that in like just on a random day. Like it messes with you more because you can see how it might do that to you, I think.
Right.
So
And
you mentioned
because
Faces
it's
of
more like,
Death. You mentioned Faces of Death. Saw that with a bunch of high school friends, and I honestly was sick, bodily sick to my stomach and head and everything for probably 3 days after watching that movie. So I hear you when you say that one.
Yeah, I mean,
I stopped eating meat for 3 years after watching.
He's like, I got 3 days. You're like, that hit me for life.
It did.
yeah, I mean, as someone who grew up on the internet, there's a lot of goofed up things that we grew up watching that, hopefully are a tad bit more censored than they were when we were kids. But I totally feel you there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of uncensored stuff that, a lot of us were exposed to. So probably helps with the fear stuff. Also, growing up with 90s horror slasher fix, probably didn't help too much because those were just bloody messes because they were trying to keep up with the ones from the 80s. So, with that,
True.
jumping over to, we'll do Younger, where's your tolerance limit at for the horrors?
Yeah, so I'm kind of along with what Mark said, and that's like when it becomes real, except like I guess it's a little bit further than that. It's not like where it's like relatable, where it's like, oh yeah, I can like you have that like emotion of like, oh, that would like be really terrible if it happened to me, not like that sense, but like if it's there's something like happening in the game, like, oh yeah, like the building caught on fire, and then my actual house catches on fire. That's where it's too far.
The literal transition is not okay for you. You know what? That makes sense though. If I watch a horror movie and someone tries to stab me, I'm not going to be okay with that either. I don't even care if I like the person. I'll be even more butthurt after that, I swear. All right, Eric, what about you? Where's your tolerance limit at?
I got about 2 limits.
Okay.
The first one, with everybody else, one of the lines that I draw is right at the point of suspension of disbelief. When we are no longer willingly suspending our disbelief, I think that's the moment it gets a little too real and the moment that it needs to stop. The other line I have is kind of a vanity line. In some of the communities that I met, or the people I've interacted, or the stories that I've heard from my sister and her friends, is some people fall into these traps where they want to fit these themes and they get overly descriptive for the sake of being descriptive. So this is where horror just turns into pure gore, and gore in a more fetishized way, in the sense that they're describing all the blood for the sake of the blood being there. There's not a narrative point, it doesn't add to the story. People are not engaged. They're just doing it because they think that they need to match this idea of horror, which is blood everywhere. Sometimes it's just like disgust because it's gross and over the top. Sometimes it's annoying. And sometimes it's very humorous. Like somebody described those 80s and 90s flicks that had blood slashers and stuff everywhere. And then that led us to satire movies where we were making fun of those horror tropes of blood everywhere. I think it was horror movie 1, horror movie 2, 3, and 4 it became so ridiculous that it was funny, even though it was a lot of blood. So, yeah, to me, it comes down to these vanity metrics. Is there a purpose to it? Or are you being too edgy? Or are you just being ridiculous? And I think that's where I would draw the line beyond that sense of disbelief.
So
I like that phrasing, sense of disbelief, because like you can tell when somebody gets uncomfortable with the situation generally, and generally speaking, that's a good time to be like, hey, speak up, be like, slow your roll.
right.
Mhm.
So as a note for GMs and DMs and players, if you notice one of your counterparts, whether they're a player at your table, the DM itself, or one of your fellow players, you need to speak up and tell people, hey, someone's having an issue. Let's take a 5-minute break or something, you know what I mean, and have a discussion. You can be adults about these things. Because you don't want to ruin people's experience. Worst comes to worst, you lose playing with a friend because they couldn't be in the session because you touched on something that is a no-no for them. We talk about these things and setting expectations in session 0. Some tables have the no-go checklist or the X marks, and if that's how you play, fantastic. But not everyone uses that. But that doesn't give you an excuse to intentionally hit those things, or when they do start affecting people, not to change what you're doing to make sure that they're in a good spot. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, you're not there to hurt your players mentally. You really want them to have fun, even if there is blood, gut, gore, terrible descriptions of things, so on and so forth. It's okay to tell your DMs they've gone too far. They can back things up. That kind of thing. I mean, for example,
but if somebody was burned alive in like an IED crash or something, you probably don't want to go into about how their leg blew off in game.
That would probably be a poor decision. That would be know your table. I mean, for example, we had to do a bit of retcon on our Lancer game last week because it involved child murder, and the player was like, I don't really want to kill a child. Can we back this up a bit?" And that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it fit the story at the time, but it didn't really feel right, so we changed it. And that's okay. You can always go back on your stories and make things less uncomfortable for people, especially when they don't necessarily have control of their actions, or if they have control of their actions, they're like, I don't really think that was okay. You know what I mean? If they admit that that wasn't all right, you can totally go back and fix things to where it feels better for their character, for their personality, whatever, right? You don't have to stick with a terrible story choice just because that's how it is. On both sides, as a player, as a DM, as a player, you can ask, hey, can we change this? Can we kind of tweak it a little bit? That doesn't make sense, so on and so forth. So don't be afraid to ask those.
Rook over here rewriting history.
hey, being the god of the DM table has its perks. Sometimes it's about fixing bad stories. But back to the limits. If I ever hear this at my table when I'm fighting monsters, I'm running. I'm putting the swords down and going. I get that. If I get that behind me, I'm done. We out of here. Something bad is coming, and I know it.
That's a nope moment.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. You hear, or
motherfucker.
Run.
Nope. Yeah,
Run.
nope.
The session is about to fade to black, and you are not ready. So.
Well, in most of those horror tropes, this is the black man who runs first and dies. So
Oh my gosh.
I'd be getting out of there quick.
Get out of there quick. You know what? Fair. So, let's see. So we've talked about our limits. We've talked about the different styles we can throw on top of things. We've talked about what we consider horror and spooky and where those lines are drawn and talking at the table here. Let's talk about some of your favorite stuff. We've talked about like what's the worst for it, but what is your favorite that you like just sit down and enjoy watching? I'm gonna start with Younger this time. Younger, what's your favorite kind of horror or thriller or suspense to watch?
That's crazy that you asked me this question because I've seen a number, but like I'm not a big like horror fan. Like
Same. Feel you.
It's just one of those things that like it's like not really piques my interest. Like I'm never like freaked out about them. People are like, "Oh, you're just scared," and it's like I'll go and I'll sit down and I'll watch The Exorcist and I'll be like, it's a creepy thought, but it's not scary. That's different. So I guess like the things that if I am gonna watch, it would be one of those things that makes you think. Like if that was real or if that happened, like that would be truly terrifying rather than it just being like the blood or like of it itself. But the ones that make you think, and then grab your attention.
Interesting. Okay. Jumping over to Eric.
I'm a big fan of psychological horror, and particularly the subversion of expectations. Again, like I'm pretty obsessed with the uncanny when it comes to being scared or feeling horror. And as humans, to understand the world around us, we tend to categorize things into boxes and into patterns. And when we get very accustomed to that, subverting those expectations or taking advantage of the way that we can or that we categorize the world makes us feel very vulnerable and very helpless. And I think that's both thrilling because it's a reminder in some ways of the need of critical thinking and to be in the moment, as well as a reminder of our own vulnerability. Additionally, it's just such a mind fuck. And that's what's really terrifying. I don't know if I call myself a narcissist, but I like to feel like I'm in control. I like to feel like I understand a lot of the world. And when I feel so small because something unexpected happens, it's very intimidating. So the subversion of expectations would be my favorite genre.
Interesting. Okay. Jumping over to Mark.
I'm stealing your words, man. I'm stealing your words.
Right. Write those down for later. We gotta sound smarter. I like it. Mark.
Okay, so movies like actually Nope terrify me the most because I've been in situations that happen like that. And because of how real it gets, like a lot of people don't understand how walking into a place where everyone hates you because of your color and want to do something terrible to you is the people. Like, it's a really scary feeling. And so watching movies where those things happen is more real for me. And that is where it's just, for me, it's just like I can't take it, because
So
it's really hard for people to like. It's scary because you don't know what people are gonna do because they hate you,
mm.
and so that's why it got me as much as it does. Because, like I said, the movie Nope is, for the most part, a comedy, but things like that have happened, and for years and years and years, people just had to be scared just because people didn't like them because of skin color,
Right.
or just because of who they were as people. And yeah, it gets me.
So, I mean, to clarify that, you're supposed to be telling us the ones you like. Do you like those movies or do you not like them?
They're funny.
Okay, I
Like, I
will
have to
agree.
give
There are definitely funny moments in the Kane and Peele stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, but you're right.
yeah.
There's some goofed up stuff thrown in there too that probably hits home for a lot of people.
Yeah, but my biggest thing is Saw, I think. So the Saw like movies is my favorite,
Now, why? Why is Saw
just
your
because of the
favorite?
contraptions.
I agree. Yeah. If you
Contraptions. Like the traps they come up
Ooh.
with for the different people. You're just like, what can they do next to these people? And it's always something that beats out the trap before it. Like, it's just always something crucial.
Oh,
And so I just love them.
I mean, on that note, those are great
Like,
ideas to throw into your game. You know what I mean? The Saw
I
contraptions themselves terrifying, especially if you throw them on top of NPCs and the heroes are trying to save those people before bad stuff happens to them, kind of thing.
I know
Just
my
as goof
favorite
up.
horror.
Oh, you do know? Well, that's good. We'll get back to you in a second. Timothy, what about you? What's your favorite kind of horror stuff to watch?
The preface with I'm gonna have to end here shortly. We've got a gentleman, probably a homeless gentleman, that's inside the gamers lounge, and we try to be as hospitable and charitable to folks as we can, but he's laying on the floor at this point, and my son is not quite sure what to do. So I may have to step inside to the business and take care of that. But in terms of favorite kind of scary, spooky horror film, I think my all-time favorite is the Blair Witch Project, and for two reasons. One, it was the first movie I remember as a young adult, like an adult that it really scared me. So not as a kid, because a lot of movies as a kid scare you, but it I I had to sleep with the lights on as an adult when I saw that movie. And then the second reason is my favorite, because then I actually went with a bunch of friends later in grad school. We went to Mount Charleston. I lived in Las Vegas for 2 years, so we went to Mount Charleston on a camping trip, and we put out one of those projectors and watched the Blair Witch Project up in the mountains in the dark during camp, and it just
Belief.
had a whole new level of fun. I mean, it was scary, but fun scary, because we were together. And anyway, so yeah, I think that was I really enjoyed that, actually.
Nice.
Do you have anything that you'd like me to address before I head out? And I apologize. I'm glad I was able to give you a whole hour.
Yeah. So I'll cut for you. So you have any pitches, things like that, and then I'll get with you later about the stuff for business side of things on the back end, so you can go deal with IRL stuff.
All right. I think I gave you my best pitch in the beginning about just describing what I'm doing. And if you live in Fairbanks, folks that are in Fairbanks, obviously it's easier to come patronize me than if you're far away. But Gamers Lounge and Internet Cafe, along with FBX Poker School. We're just building community. It's super cheap, $5 an hour for the gaming, and we did a tournament today with $5 entry fee for that Smash Bros. So we're making it really accessible to all budgets, families, kids, and we're giving away lots of free stuff actually, and just trying to, like I said, build community here in little old Fairbanks, Alaska.
Nice. All right. Well, we'll let you go, and then we'll finish up here. So thank you for your time. Again, I'll bug you in a bit.
Be safe.
All right. Hopefully, he doesn't get stabbed by a hobo, because that would be high tier, unfortunate.
Oh, well, we're talking about horror. There's nothing more
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
terrifying than the unpredictable
Would be
behavior
messed
of...
up.
Oh.
So I got to talk
Then
about
you
mine
just
before.
don't hear back from him.
Yeah, right. I gotta swing by the shop tomorrow because I forgot my charger there at the tournament. So, I will hear the story later. But my favorite is definitely B-rate horror movies. The ones where you can give the bad guy or terrible creature a terrible nickname and giggle the entire time they're doing stuff. I think one of the best ones was what was the Paranormal Activity? That movie was creepy as heck to me, right, for a long time, until I named the demon Kermit, and then I couldn't stop laughing. Because it had like the froggy footprints or something dumb, and I was like, Kermit over here gonna rip your sheets off, Kermit over here being inappropriate, Kermit got his pickle out, run. You know, hilarious, right? Just completely, and the same one with like the raunchy B-rate, C-rate horror movies where it's just basically an excuse to see half-naked women running across the screen, right? Those are just as fun to watch. Some of the best ones, it isn't really a horror movie and more of that play on. Like we talked about the actual horror movie 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or scary movie, so that's what they're called. Scary Movie 2 is like my favorite one of those. When they're in the mansion, I can watch that to this day and just giggle super hard at that stupid parrot. But the other one is Dale and Tucker versus Evil.
That's literally the one I was gonna hit on, bro.
That
my god, that is like one of my favorite movies.
You talk
and
about
it goes along kind of like what Timothy was saying. Like he said, like the Blair Witch Project. I think the first like season of that was like the Haunting of Hill House
Mhm.
or whatever. And the creepy thing about that was that you didn't know the actual situation until you had gotten through the entire show.
Right, so
And that's kind of
the Blair Witch is
situation
a
with
movie. Younger, you're thinking of something else. It's not a show.
Okay.
It's a singular movie.
Well, no, Haunting of Hill House was like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
TV show, creepy.
Yeah.
But Tucker and Dale versus Evil, yeah, like where it's just like one side is just completely blindsided, and the other side like has a totally different idea of the situation, and they literally kill themselves over it.
I think that's a great movie.
I've never seen it. Is that like a Shaun of the Dead type thing?
No, it's even better. If you have not watched it, please do. It's there's a tad bit of inappropriateness, but I don't remember there being any like naked people or anything. So
No.
I think it's a PG-13 movie. Honestly, it might be an R. I don't remember. But it's not super terrible. It's a little gory, is the worst I can describe it. But it is as if the teenage group that gets hunted by a bunch of psychos is one side of the movie, and then the other side is the quote-unquote psychos just doing their thing, right? And dealing with these suicidal teenagers, and they just don't understand why they keep killing themselves. And it is hilarious. You talk about a words.
Subversion of
Subversion.
expectation.
Thank you, those words. It hits that really hard, right? Because you have the classic, oh, there's hillbillies in the woods. They're the nicest guys ever. They're super hilarious. So if we take one thing from this podcast tonight, it's go watch Dale and Tucker versus Evil.
Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Yeah, that
it
one.
is worth it.
I think it's on Netflix. You can find it all over the place.
Sponsor us.
Yeah, right?
Anywhere.
Anywhere. It's on all the streaming services. All right, so we're going to give our two fantastic remaining star guests a couple minutes to talk about their stuff, any last minute plugs they can think of, stuff like that. Then we'll do our wrap up and we'll be done in a little over an hour. So starting with Mark, since you're the one right here next to me.
All right. Come check out my YouTube channel. It's at the Number Beat. We do a podcast over there It's called What Are You Even Talking About? We touch on a lot of different subjects, so everybody has something for them. We just started in the last few months, so we're new and we're starting to get traction, so that's really cool. Check out my Instagram and Facebook at the Nomothet Art. Um, yeah, we'll just have a good time. And if you want life coaching, you have to be in North Carolina, but I also do life coaching for people.
Hey, we got a couple people in the server on North Carolina, so they might see this.
Nice.
All right, jumping over to Eric.
I don't really have any plugs to give out at this time, but I will go ahead and give out 3 pieces of advice that have stuck with me as a coach that I constantly tell my players. And that would be failure isn't fatal, success isn't final, and you don't have to be good to get started, but you have to get started to be good.
Hey, I like that one.
Those come from Les Brown, by the way, world's greatest motivational speaker.
I think you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, right.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Sorry, I'm typing stuff up really quick. Younger.
Oh, another good horror movie. Oh, sorry.
No, you're
One
good.
more good horror movie to check out would be Demonic Toys versus Puppet Master.
I feel like I watched that one. That's another good B-rate one, if I remember correctly.
It sounds like a twisted porno.
Yeah, it could have went that way.
Talk about
Demonic Toys versus Puppet Master.
Type that out in chat. Joe Rogan it up. Type it out in chat. All right. Younger, any fun announcements for us on our end before I get too crazy into things that you can think of?
The code for this month?
Yes. What's the code for this month? Since this is our first October thing.
I want to guess. I don't know it off the top.
No, you can just tell me. I'll type it in right now.
Spooky 907.
We're doing a spooky again. That was last year's. You lazy.
Dang it. It's not my fault.
Okay, well, that's what it is this year again. Spooky 907, capital S, lowercase everything else. That'll get you 10% off at the website on basically everything that we sell that isn't like our merch, t-shirty things, or our mugs. And then, we do have some good news, kind of related to the Gamer Lounge. We've been kind of searching for a place to push down roots. And we have been offered a spot once a week at the Gamer Lounge. And I think we're going to take that up. So you'll see us there on Tuesday. Causing havoc from 5 to probably 8, somewhere around there. We'll figure out the times when we get there. But if you're interested in seeing this person, go check us out on Tuesdays at the Gamer Lounge, and or just go to the Gamer Lounge because it's cool, and lots of fun to be had there. You know what I mean? Whether you're a gamer or not, it's a good place to hang out. For those of you that have kids and parents and things, they encourage parents and kids playing together, all that fun stuff. Worst comes to worst, you drop them off for a date night kind of thing. I think they have those kind of dates, right, Eric? That they're like special.
Yes, we have a couple of different packages that we can sell for date night. They'll go get a gift card over at the Pump House or some other fancy restaurant, and the kids will get 2 hours of gaming.
Hey, see? That's a win-win for, at least in my opinion.
Just keep in mind, we're not a babysitting service. They should be kids who will be all right on their own for a short period of time.
Right.
We'll be supervision, but that's it. We're supervising. We're not...
Not changing diapers.
Not changing diapers. Not breaking a fight. Well, we have to do that part, but
you got those.
We're not parenting you kids.
Yeah, right.
I got enough kids on.
It's
people, adults that act that way. Maybe I should clarify what that sentence meant.
Careful, you're gonna get arrested over here. Catch a case, unnecessary. All right. Yeah, right. All right. So, all jokes aside, thank you guys very much for being here. With adventure in mind, have a wonderful time. You guys are gonna get the outro music. Are you ready? Dun, 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 dun. Maybe if I can find it. I'm in the wrong spot.
Hey, this man just, I don't want to do this no more.
That was not the thing I meant to click.
Rush roulette with the soundboard over there?
Sometimes. My mouse broke.